Guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. This is already the third part of our manga. If you like it, then be sure to like the comments and 12,500 subscribers to my channel. The chapter begins with the fact that they explain to us that everything is balanced. For centuries, humans were at the top among all creatures, until everything was changed by the strange appearance of a new genetic structure. The improved form of this new genetic composition led to the birth of its representatives of a completely different species, which they call Kimai. Minor improvements in strength, stamina, and regeneration are just auxiliary resources of Kimai DNA. A third of the world's population are the Kimai, and there would be no problem if they did not develop special abilities called abilities. However, most abilities are mostly harmless. The ability to control the simplest elements or control the internal structure, creating and managing various kinds of extensions of your body. In rare cases, to change the intracellular structure of the body at will with the possibility of different mutations. But not all abilities are harmless. A huge force of several representatives of the elite Kimai makes many people tremble in horror at their possibility of disappearing, since their power can lead to the final destruction of the human race. Then we are shown a city called Port of Spain. The host greeted everyone watching at the 13th night duel. He knows that people aren't completely tired yet. They can't afford to get tired here on the battlefield with just an average level of pain. The best legitimate mixed martial arts tournament you can see. A brand new human titan from Amber's gym should enter the ring, and his opponent, the deadly sharp Kimai, who has 15 wins and 4 losses, is from the Salt Lake City gym. She versus Quill, man versus Kimai. They were waiting for human blood. They didn't have many similar battles, but it is not necessary to remove a person from the accounts immediately. 3 of his victories look promising. Quill was angry that a man had come out against him. She understood that since he had 15 victories, then there was some kind of peculiarity in him, but he did not understand what. Quill said that if he entered this octagon, then there is no room for pity. So I called him to come closer and he used his ability, Porcupine. By measuring the elasticity of its muscle fibers, it can stretch them in the form of protruding spikes, bending and then strengthening the skin that covers the muscle spikes, creating sharp games. He immediately hit him first, but Chi blocked the blow. The presenter said that he would not like to be in the place of the host of the Kimai strike. Now it's time for Mom and Grandma to turn away from the screen. Kimai also kicked, but the kick was also blocked. He told Heart to show him something. He handled all that protection. He also understood that Kimai was covered with tongs, so no one would attack in such defense, but he was the first to subside. His opponent decided to give him a head start, and this time he will be without needles. Heart knew it was probably a decoy, but maybe he could dodge it. He ran at him and dodged the first jab, and he will be able to catch him by surprise when he is open. Heart wanted to hit him in the open side, and Kimai asked that it was all he could and created spikes in his side and hit him. Heart called him a cheeky bastard. Kimai told him to get up as soon as possible. Heart understood that he could choose a certain point to release the needles whenever he wanted. Reliable protection in a collision with a human opponent. However, the fact that it is intermittently covered with needles means only one thing. He can't maintain his needles for too long. He assumed 30 to 60 seconds maximum. Kimai praised him for his vigilance. Too long tension causes cramps. He also decided to simplify his task. He can create needles only in one area and at one time, so he wanted him to try again. Heart understood that he was only provoking him a second time, but Heart still bought it, and the presenter noted that Chi, like a madman, is now working with his feet. He started running around him and wondered where he was going to release the spikes this time. Immediately caught the moment and hit him in the face. It was the first blow of a man. Quill knew he wasn't being careful. He is smart enough to strike correctly. He knows that if he delays his retreat, he will be pierced through. Heart prepared his foot and decided to hit Quill with his foot. His opponent called him an idiot because he attacked through a jump and it was convenient for Quill. He immediately put his hands in the block and created his spikes. Quill understood that he would not be able to change his trajectory right in the air. It had to be the end of his day. But he was able to remove his foot. Quill was shocked that he jumped back and assumed that it was a false blow. He crouched down while Quill was still holding the block. He turned around and hit the opponent right in the stomach. The blow was very strong, and Quill himself was very surprised. He hit with his right hand and then decided to hit with his left. He didn't want to let it happen again. He created spikes right on his face and shouted for him to attack him. But Heart just smiled and punched him in the stomach again. Quill knew he couldn't lose again and took Heart's hand. He created thorns on his stomach and they pierced his limb. And even though it hurt, Heart said it was just a bait, because he can't create spikes in 2 places at the same time. That's why his jaw is now open, and immediately hit the other hand on the head, and it was a knockout. After the fight, the protagonist recalled the fight itself and how he won. An hour later, the 14th night battle began. The host said that the last fight was a man against Kimai. It was some kind of madness and Chi showed himself. At the same time, the protagonist was wiping his blood and then wringing out rags. It was a beautiful day for a bloody spectacle. The protagonist stared hard at himself through the mirror. The next fight is Balrog from the south against Ramsty from Kira. Then two guys came up to him. Harp turned around and they said he was in good trouble. Hearing this, the winner turned back. The guys wanted to get straight to the point. They had put too much money on his loss today. Therefore, the fact that he won becomes the main problem for him. They added that everything is simple. He returns them every last cent earned tonight and they will let him lick his wounds. They also advised him not to pretend to be a hero, because now he doesn't look very good after Q-Will worked with him. Hart told them to close the door before they started. One of the guys took out a knife and was pleased, and also said that he was inviting him to his funeral. And then they show us the moon. A little later, the girl corresponded with someone and called some guy cute. She approached Demalia and greeted her. She also greeted him in response and said that she was glad to see him, and also that he was incredible today. Also, he should not worry about abrasions because they make him hotter. But the protagonist only said thank you to her. She also added that they always throw crazy parties after fights. That's why they are once a month. But he never came there and he doesn't spend time with her. But she replied that he had a couple of things waiting for him at home. Demalia had to give up and she gave him his winnings today. She also added that if he gets bored, he knows where to find her. When she left, he told her to tell the administrator that two beaten guys were lying in her locker room and he had no idea what had happened there. Already in the dead of night, Chi went to the bathroom with water and realized that pain allows people to feel alive. His arms ached, as well as his shoulders. But the reason he tolerates her is not in vain. Already on the morning of the next day, the girl and Tavin came to him. She said that Chi is with a girl now, so he is definitely busy and also always late. But Tavin didn't agree with her, because he doesn't think that no woman can take more than a day. Leaving the house, Chi told them to speak louder, because it's not 6 o'clock in the morning at all. Tavin replied that he had known him for 15 years, and he had been living here for 7 years, but none of them had been inside. He assumed that he was selling drugs there, and his grandmother just needed painkillers. Then the girl shouted for him to get into the car as soon as possible. After, when they arrived at the gym, the girl asked what time to come for them, and Tavin thanked her for giving her a ride. It was their club, he and the guys from the club. They're not from rich families. That old man right in front of us is Master Leo Thomas. He is a war hero. The danger to people's lives posed by Kim I caused the war 61 years ago. People against Kim I killed more innocents than anyone is willing to admit, but more on that later. The guy tried to hit the coach, but the old man easily dodged. Master Leo is like a father to them. The protagonist continued to strike blows, but Leo didn't even really strain. He understood that there was no better teacher to be found. He treated them like his own sons. The guy used his ability, namely speed, and Leo said that being predictable in such a case means only one thing. The guy tried to attack him, and Leo added that he was using it completely wrong. Leo grabbed his hand, which he tried to hit, and therefore Azam was in shock. Leo told him to listen to him more carefully next time and just knock him out with simple movement. He also added that they are all unique, which makes each of you special. That is, their abilities are one of a kind, specially encoded in their individuality. Then he punched his palm in the stomach and said that if they failed to perfect their unique differences, a gift that distinguishes them from others, they will become an ordinary human fighter. Then he grabbed the flying enemy and knocked him over. They should use what they have. He twisted the enemy around him like nunchucks, and then threw it out altogether. During the flight, he lifted his leg and just kicked it out very far. Tavin also noted that when the master sees his beaten face, it will be very funny to him when he kicks his ass for the fight, to which the protagonist replied that his girlfriend was leading him by the nose, while calling him a child. Leo told Azam not to give up and try again, and he agreed. The other guys noticed that he volunteered to be the first and that such a bright future awaited him. Also, the guy with long hair added that the master mentioned something like the need to talk to him when he arrives. Looking at his face, he hoped that he had written a will. Then Azam flew out of the ring again and the master said that he had had enough for today. Azam was free and he should have rested. They are working on attack tactics later. Then he turned to Chi and called him to him while squinting hard. The protagonist was very scared and started sweating. And Tavin started joking with him and said that he could not help him because according to him he was a child. Approaching the coach, he greeted him and was very worried. The coach carefully examined him. He saw these wounds and understood what a fool he was. Leo started telling him off because he was fighting behind his back again when he specifically forbade it. He is a human, so what does he think when he goes to fight against Kimai, whose abilities exceed him? He asked him to look at his wounds because he didn't want to lose another son. He hit him with such force that Chi's spirit seemed to fly out of the protagonist's body. Leo understood that he was not an underground fighter, so why was he so careless? But still Leon decided to start training. But before he could finish, he was interrupted by a stomp. The guys turned around and someone approached the ring, who told Leo what he was so serious about. It was Rakesh Rampersad. He was sure Leo hoped he would never see him again. He's a narcissistic guy and a big shot in the triad. Recently, he entered the top 150 recorded by the strongest Khmer in the world. Rakesh greeted everyone in the hall. Leo was very angry and he was looking at him from under his cap. She was surprised that Rakesh came. Tavan said that no one is allowed into the dojo during training. He clearly did not read this at the entrance and assumed that he was illiterate. Leo said that Rakesh didn't belong here and everyone looked at him angrily. To which Rakesh told Leo that this was not the best way to greet his beloved former student. She was shocked by this. Tavan shouted at him to get out, because that's what the teacher said. The other guys immediately picked it up and started getting angry, and Rakesh noticed that they had a spark and offered a little sparring. Leo realized that he still hadn't changed and began to burn, and then completely caught fire, which was hard even for the guys standing next to him. The teacher shouted that it was enough. She was shocked with the strength of the master, and even Rakesh and his friends stood still. Leo said it wasn't his house anymore, and it won't be repeated, so they should leave immediately. In response, Rakesh said that 25 years had passed since he crossed the threshold of this old place. He believed that Leo spoke as if he was at the peak of Khmer's power, and yet he has no idea what true power is. As he left, he added that he would recognize his power before he died, and it might happen sooner than he thinks. Later that evening, Chi stayed to clean the hall. He noticed that Leo was putting away bags of things and therefore decided to ask if he was okay. And who does this Rakesh think he is if he dares to threaten him like that? And also what happened between Leo and Rakesh. Leo explained that he was an old student of his many years ago. His arrogance prevented him from ever truly progressing, but the scary truth is that he was one of his strongest. The dojo was small then. 4 guys is all they had. Rakesh was so adamant in proving his strength that he constantly challenged others. Apart from his vanity, Rakesh's problem was that he never understood the seriousness that accompanies a fight. The animal side of his talent manifested itself, and he began to joke and grin. Once, behind his back, he challenged a young man named Jacob, one of the best Khmer in the class. This fight was a mistake from the very beginning. He doesn't know what he was trying to prove, but he killed Jacob. There was a big investigation and all that. He left the dojo after he was acquitted, manslaughter, as they called it. He hasn't been back since. She was surprised that he got away with it. He wanted to beat him up the next time he came. To which Leo began to laugh, because Rakesh was threatened by a small human boy. The protagonist started laughing in response and added that whatever happens, his students cover his back. Leo was already sure of this. He wanted to finish the cleaning himself. He knows that he has his usual things to do. After Chi was at the doctor, he was glad to see him safe and sound. Hart greeted him and asked how he was doing. The doctor explained that work had become a bit hectic these days. There was a regular bar fight, but with Kimio's. God was really kind to him no matter what, so there are no complaints. Julian will also have a 6th child, which was hard to believe. She was surprised and called his daughter a real superhero. Evan replied that exactly so, and now he would like to return to him. He decided to examine it as usual. He provided him with all his recommendations. He also rounded up a new drug called amoxicillin. This bad boy should help with internal bleeding 1 time a day, as usual. Doc also asked if there were any improvements in his left eye. She replied that it was still a little dim. He added that he could only see at 60% power. Evan took his glasses and said that as a doctor and father, he should take his advice into account. He can do everything possible to provide him with all the necessary medications, but he cannot force him to stop what he does in his free time. His body is stronger than that of an ordinary person. He assumes that this is thanks to Leo's training, but he was still lucky to be alive. He can't hide it from his friends and family forever. The pain and discomfort will manifest whether he wants it or not. His lab results are still the same. A punctured lung, which has not yet been given time to recover, fractures of both collarbones and a bruised shoulder joint, serious scarring on tissues and muscles, nerve damage to the right arm, damage to the left optic nerve, a broken rib and 7 screws on the ankle, and the internal bleeding still hasn't subsided. He didn't understand if the money from the fight club was worth it. His body is at the limit, and he keeps going too far. His whole life is in front of him. He worries that he is shortening it more and more every day. She replied to him that he really appreciated his concern for him, but there was still a little fire left in him. Besides, the money would go to a very good cause. Moreover, Evan himself said that he is strong for a person. Evan smiled and agreed with his decision. Doc hoped he'd tell him if he needed anything at all. The protagonist thanked him again. He also noticed that he looked very healthy, and asked if his wife still forces him to do this yoga. But Evan said no. He chose a much more masculine form of exercise, and it was karate, from which Chi was very happy for him. The doctor asked him to take care of himself, and he will grow old and live as happily as he does. Later that night, Leo was reading a book. Rakesh slowly opened the door and the master took a breath. Rakesh was not alone, but with his group. Leo noticed that he really hadn't changed. Rakesh was very angry. At this time, Chi was talking to Tevin. He felt so uncomfortable leaving the master like this, so that he himself closed the dojo because Rakesh threatened him. Tevin replied that Rakesh was a rich idiot, but he wasn't stupid enough to try to kill the man who made him who he is. She understood that he was right and wanted to go check on him first thing in the morning. Tevin said again that he knows that the master is like a father to him, but do not strain yourself, because he will be fine. He wanted to leave already, or he would cause the beast's wrath on his chest. The girl shouted into the phone that he wanted to take his man back, and at the same moment, an explosion occurred in the dojo. Rakesh was on his knees, and Leo was all on fire. Leo thought about how he hated being old. He was really too weak to avoid firearms now. Rakshan's other partner was surprised, and he was holding a gun. Rakshan was unhappy and did not understand where he got the gun from. He was telling him that he was his opponent and he wanted to finish him off himself. He wanted to help him, and Leo told this kid to run away. Leo used the phoenix spear and flew at Rakesh. Cass flew to the side and his gun fell. Leo began to scold him for not raising his nephew well, that even he is just beginning to realize the responsibility. Rakshan shouted that he was talking about responsibility as if he understood it. He refuses to acknowledge his power, even after he put this failed dojo on the map. There has never been a stronger disciple in this place. Jacob is nowhere near his progress. If he had known that he couldn't handle him, this fool would never have accepted his challenge. Leo replied that he should never say his name again. Leo knew that at least this wound would kill him. He succeeded in cultivating a depraved mind in his nephew. With everything he had, he tried for him, not only as a student, but also as a son, but somehow he went beyond the limits of reasoning. That night Leo wanted to correct his mistakes. Leo flew at Rakesh and he told the old man to attack. Leo's talent is Ilios Phoenix Flame. He enters the state of Ilios, the Sunfire talent, one of the original Great Four talents. The master hit with his knee, but Rakesh was able to defend himself from the blow with his elbow. He was shocked by the force of the blow, and Leo already added his hand and hit the Rakesh. He tried to attack in response, but the old master dodged, and with a precise blow to the side, he took Rakesh out of the rut. For him, this blow was very painful. Then he grabbed him by the collar and threw him straight up. Then Leo wanted to fly right up to him, and Rakesh was shocked that the master wanted to use an air attack. Grandfather flew straight at his enemy, and Rakesh understood that he would not give him a second to activate his talent. Miraculously, Rakesh was able to dodge, so after a second the old man turned around and flew back. He didn't understand why he couldn't activate the talent and thought he was frozen. Leo was next to him and just threw the enemy away with an explosion. Rakesh was terrified, but also furious. The old man looked at him, and then used the Ilios technique, Falling Meteor. The attack was very powerful, and therefore Leo thought that he had already won. The old man stood up after the attack and realized that he was already too old to heal such wounds. Then, when Rakesh started to get up, he told him that his strength had weakened with age. He congratulated him on separating him from death for a few seconds. But as for Rakesh, Leo seemed to disappear at an incredibly fast speed and appeared right in front of Rakesh and directed his fingers to his eyes. Leo, dying, wanted to make sure that he lived the rest of his days crippled. The old man literally tore out the eyes of his enemy, from which Rakesh began to beat in agony. He was screaming incredibly hard, from which his nephew was just in shock. He ran up to him and started dragging him along, and also said that the building was already collapsing by itself, and therefore they should leave now. It turned out that Leo had only torn out one eye, and Rakesh cursed him, saying that this building would turn out to be his grave. The old man was sitting surrounded by fire. Life was slowly leaving him. His eyesight began to soap up and his strength was leaving. After that, we are shown how Chi and others are at the funeral of their beloved sensei. The priest began to deliver his speech that all these people had gathered to mourn the death of Leo Thomas. He was a great man. He asked for this small meeting in the event of his demise. He made a name for himself thanks to his extraordinary abilities, even though he refused to acknowledge his own fame. Regardless of this fame, it was his kindness and compassion that stood out to everyone who knew him. From the point of view of this world, Leo was a flame of power, but they, his friends, consider his true splendor to be love. One of the guys told Chi that they know that Rakesh did it. They all want revenge. Sitting here on their asses won't solve anything. Another said that he looked around here, and next month Rakesh will have a tournament to celebrate his place in the top 150 around the world. The winner will have the opportunity to fight him one-on-one. They want him to go represent their gym, Red Coals. Each group can include only 2 participants for fights, but Chi only stood silently with his back to everyone. Then he asked why because he is the only one of them who has no talent. It just doesn't make sense. Tavin replied that they didn't care, and it wasn't a meaningless suggestion, but being human has never limited him. The master always recognized him as the smartest when it came to fighting among them, and he won't be alone. Tavin will be with him. She looked at him and said that he agreed. As soon as they agreed on a common goal, then they would start. At this time, Rakesh recalled his fight with Leo. And he did not like these memories very much. He even squeezed his sofa and was very nervous. 4 months later, the whole group was at the battle stadium, Rakesh Enterprise. There are a lot of people here and they all like to watch the fights. The guy has already booked the 2 of them a locker room. All they have to do now is register and they're in business. On the first day of the event, several strong fighters are the first to fight to gain views. Tavan is beating 7, and Chi is already 8. Tavan's girlfriend told him that he should be careful and he was even a little scared. Then they started talking on TV that now they will look at the organizer of the tournament of the Central Man Kimai MMA Rakesh Rampersad. The whole gang very maliciously looked at the TV, where there was already a photo of Rakesh. The presenter said that this is the same man from Trinidad and Tobago, the first Kimio to enter the top 150 strongest fighters in the world. Now the 61-year-old millionaire is something other than a child prodigy. With the exception of his questionable past incident with the police, Rakesh has amassed a secure fortune and fame for himself. During his career in MMA, Rakesh has won 47 victories and suffered 3 defeats. For 37 years he has acquired 8 properties around the world, along with his own hotel, Rampersad Tower, several permits to participate in professional races, and his own clothing line. Rakesh is their own miracle child. They also expressed their deepest condolences to Mr. Rampersad, as they did 4 months ago. The entire nation was forced to mourn the death of his former mentor, legend and war hero Leo Thomas. The guy was angry because no one even knew that Leo was killed by Rakesh. Martial arts competitions have been reinterpreted thanks to the integration of Kimai participants. And Rakesh Rampersad spares no expense in holding MMA competitions in his homeland in Trinidad and Tobago, creating opportunities for the disclosure of local talents. She just silently put on his hood and the TV continued broadcasting. Rakesh said that the power cannot be forged. People either have it or they don't. However, for those who do this, the line between mediocrity and enormous power is drawn by the blood of those who have neglected the absolute gap. Then everyone noticed that Rakesh had a scar, which makes him twice as dangerous as previously thought. She said he had heard enough. Therefore, I wanted to move out soon. Then she asked what their plan was. The guy told him not to die in his first fight. This is a brutal context tournament. Rivals are allowed to kill each other to win the round instantly. Tournaments with a brutal context are MMA competitions with a rating of 21+, where fatal injuries are encouraged, because talents are too deadly to limit arena kills. Tavan called him a dumbass, because the master would have killed them for participating in this tournament. He didn't even tell his girlfriend that it was a BK rating. In any case, he thinks he'll go first. After that, we are shown the arena where the host announces the start of the 4th match of the night. Tavan came out from the east and his girlfriend wished him good luck. And his opponent came out to him, a dream once untouched, Kimio, whose speed is second to none. As a result, Sun Raz has never been injured in his MMA history. Tavan was a little surprised, and then he smiled and said that a tank and a speedster were going to fight now, and he liked it. But the Dreamtime did not answer him. Tavan went on to say that he knows him. He's one of the fastest Kimios. Well, he's actually one of the coolest, and it takes a lot to move him, so he wanted to have a fight. But before he could finish his sentence, his opponent was already behind him and almost kicked him in the head. Immediately we are shown that Rakesh's assistant asks him if he needs anything, but Rakesh was silent. Tavan flew away from the blow and Sun once told him to listen to him carefully. Everyone has failed trying to test him, and he will be no exception. Tavan called him a dumbass and immediately rushed at him, but the dream hit him off his feet and immediately started running around him, and Tavan said that he was mocking him. In a moment, there were already 3 Dreamtimes around Tavan. Azam noticed that he had heard of him as a fellow whose talent for speed is called the threshold of merging images. The vortex flow created by his movements gives him enough residual time to materialize, creating duplicates of himself. She shouted for Tavan to pick up his buns. He's an exhausted tank. Tavan replied that he was trying, but he was attacked from all sides by a dream once, but Tavan understood that he could withstand it. He beat him more and more, and immediately Tavan began to transform, and Tavan shouted that he should not dare to underestimate him. Immediately there was an explosion and even a dream once. I was surprised. Tavan grew a rhinoceros skin and literally became a rhinoceros man. His talent, a hidden fake. The ability to create a protective shell that increases defensive and offensive capabilities. Sun was in shock and Tavan rushed straight at him, but the speedster was able to dodge his blow. He didn't understand what kind of talent it was. The host shouted that Tavan had finally revealed his talent after being hit. The opponent quickly ran away and the presenter continued. With this type of talent, a self-generated shell encases the user in a protective shell and concealment. This grants the wearer a number of enhanced special power attributes associated with it. Tavan said that the game is finally starting, because this skin makes him much stronger. 3 Dreamtimes rushed at Tevin and started running around him. Tevin also understood that he could not match his speed in any way. In fact, he was even slower with all this added weight, but he wanted to wear him down. But before he could finish, the Dream rushed at him and hit him in the chin with his knee. Tevin didn't understand how he could pierce his armor. She shouted that he was taking too many punches, so he needed to find his weak spot. This is exactly what their teacher taught them. Leo said that talents are just a smoldering flame inside a person. They can either be nurtured or extinguished. Flames have enemies, just like kindling. Sometimes the enormous power of talent, on the flip side, can also be its biggest downfall. This hidden spark is known as the talent blind spot. Sleep Raz was still running around Tevin, and for him it was a problem. He understood that he should just think and figure out how to win. Immediately he looked at the floor and understood. The Dream once flew straight at him with the words that here he was. Tevin raised his foot and hit the floor with all his might, and the arena was slightly destroyed and Sun had to cancel the attack. The host also said that at the moment, Tevin was able to turn the tide of the battle in his favor. Tevin told Sun Raza that he might have been granted speed, but he was granted strength, and he hit him with all his might, from which he just flew away from the arena. The presenter and the audience were just in shock, and Rakesh just kept silent. The Dream Raz flew straight into the protective barrier, and the presenter joked that Tevin decided to test it for strength with the body of the Dream Raz. From one blow, Sleep was unconscious, and Tevin said that from just a blow he was out of order. Immediately, the doctors took his opponent away, and his friends and girlfriend were already near Tevin. Azam was very happy for him, and his girlfriend started crying. He noticed that there was no Chi, and Louis said that he went to prepare because he was next. Louis was worried about Chi because he had never been so serious. The whole plan is just to expose Rakesh. However, he is afraid to see Chi's reaction when he comes face to face with him. Immediately, the crowd began shouting, who were happy and shocked by Tevin's victory. The host said that the next fight was now Chi Heart versus Nanaku. They were paired up based on their previous tournament results. During their careers, representing their respective gyms, they both made names for themselves. A man is a Chi fighter. His fighting wisdom is reflected in his skill. And the second fighter is the mutant Nanaku. His gym participates only in tournaments of a brutal context, and that says a lot. Chi was a little surprised, and Nanaku said that he was angry because the tournament at which he would demonstrate his talent to the whole world, and they would shame him by forcing him to fight with a damn boy without talent. But he didn't care, because he was sure that after he died, he would just move on to the next fight. The mutant didn't know if it was a joke, but Chi told him not to stand in his way. Rakesh also noted that he looks quite familiar. The battle began and the opponents stood in their racks. The mutant immediately rushed at him and tried to attack, but Chi simply parried his blow and tried to hit him in the groin, then with a kick from his foot, but this blow was blocked as well. Azam shouted for him to show him. Louis then asked who this Nanaku was. He's a full-time shark or a hidden talent user, to which the bearded man replied that his questions would be answered in the near future. Nanaku told Chi to give heat and rushed straight at him and hit him from the foot, but the protagonist managed to dodge the blow, and in response, he hit from the elbow, to which Nanaku shouted that he could smell his rage. He hit Chi, and in response, he attacked him with his foot. Then they clasped hands and collided heads. The mutant suggested that Chi thought he would die a better death than this, but he didn't. The mutant confessed that he had killed more than he had seen and he would die like everyone else. He assured him that he would die like everyone else, with the shame of fear etched on his face. Chi jumped up and kicked Nanaki's chest, to which he said that the prey always resists. He tore his clothes and added that he was ready to get serious and fight, but Chi replied that he was interfering with his mission. Louis asked if they were equal to each other, and the man mockingly asked if he really believed that a man could be compared to Kimyo's killing machine. Immediately Chi hit him in the face and the man continued talking. Nanaku was born for war. Deadly combat is his true element. Therefore, we need to wait for the first blood. The mutant struck with his right hand, but Chi easily dodged and hit with his elbow. Immediately, Nanaku grabbed him by the neck and growled very hard. He cut his stomach with his claws, and Azam and Lucy were shocked because this is too serious a wound, to which Grandpa said that everything was just beginning. Nanaku shed the first blood. He looked at her and licked his claws with the words that you need to show people a real show. She looked at his wound and was surprised that he cut him right through his vest. He has to hold on, and he just needs to get through to the next round. He was thinking that this fish boy was interfering with the family business. He covered the wound with one hand and tried to attack with the other, but the mutant easily dodged and realized that she was surprised. He hit him in the face and jumped up, preparing for a kick from his foot. With all his strength, he kicked him and flew away. Blood splattered on the floor, and Chi was very hard. At the same moment, Nanaku lowered himself to the floor and approached the blood. He began to lick Chi Heart's blood and called his name. When he got up, he said that he could not decide what to leave for the trophy. his head on a spike or his heart in a jar. Immediately, he rushed at him and the host said that this fight was getting crazy. Nanaku cut his face, shoulders, and a bunch of other places chi. He understood that the more he bled, the less he would breathe. Azam asked Louis what it was. Tavin shouted that it looked bad. He demanded that Chi wake up and find the blind spot. The guy with the mohawk noticed that Tavin looked very worried. The old man added, so that he would not waste his time, hunting grounds are a sight worth seeing. Louis understood that Nanaku was hunting Chi. At the same time, the old man noticed that as soon as Nanaku sheds his first blood on the hunt, he has already won. He growled very much and became incredibly creepy that even Tavin and the presenter were shocked. While his blood is flowing, his instincts are overflowing. Nanaku was hungry for more and Azam told someone to stop it, but the old man replied that it was too late, so they just need to see. Nanaku is a bloody mad hunter, his talent, bloody madness. The smell of human blood or Kimio's blood causes Nanaku to experience uncontrolled physical evolution. Then Nanaku goes into hunter state, which makes him an experienced killing machine. Tavin asked if they were mocking him. The audience began to shout and rejoice. Having changed, Nanaku began to growl. She was in shock, and Rakesh smiled deeply. Nanaku was walking slowly towards Chi, and the host asked if he was the only one here who was still worried about the person. Azam also said that he did not like how this coincidence looks. Nanaku is a user of the talents of the state. His blind spot would be the lack of blood. But regardless of what, the battlefield is flooded with the blood of previous fighters. Then they explained to us that one of the rarest types of talents, state talents, allow the user to enter a state or mode where, while the user remains in this mode, he is granted access to special attributes. This explains why he looked like a shark from the very beginning. He evolved even before the start of the match. He jumped and hit the ground with a heavy blow, but Chi managed to dodge. Then he started attacking him from all sides, but Nanaka was only happy, which surprised Chi. The shark noted that the prey always moves so fast. He can smell their blood everywhere. He tried to attack, but Chi dodged and ended up behind him. Chi grabbed it with his hands and wanted to throw it over himself. The protagonist understood that this was his last chance and he would end it here and now. It was hard for him to pick him up and tear him off the floor, so that even the floor began to collapse. And in a moment Nanaku was on the floor, hammered into the floor. The presenter immediately noted that the guy has incredible strength. She started to get up and Tavin was glad of his friend's victory. But Nanaka told Heart that doesn't nature show him that prey is never a winner. He grabbed him by the arm and literally drove him into the floor. All the people were literally in shock and opened their mouths. Azam and Tavin began to worry about Chi. Rakesh also wondered what he would do now. Nanak, holding Chi's head, asked him if he was satisfied. This was his result of his many years of delusions. He dared over his skill. Nanak added that Chi's blood would be on their hands. He promised to kill every person who is confident enough to participate in tournaments with Kimio. He picked it up and with one blow threw it back hard. Then he began to approach the protagonist again with the words that her strength could not be faked. He either has it or he doesn't. However, for those who do, the line between mediocrity and enormous power is drawn by the blood of those who have neglected the absolute gap. Tavin shouted that the fight had stopped, and the old man told him to watch his friend die. Nanak asked if he could hear this silence. He was using his corpse as a stepping stone. How he will paint this floor with his blood. But do not rejoice others, because Nanak is known for his compassionate heart, so he will be merciful, giving him a quick death. Azam shouted for them to open the gate, and Tavin kept yelling for them to stop the fight. Immediately Nanak finally decided that his head would hang on his wall and laughed. Rakesh was surprised that he was interested that he could be associated with the legend of S-Heart, but he's certainly a disappointment, cursed to bear his name. She woke up and Nanak was already flying at him, who was ready to devour him whole. Looking at this mouth with teeth, Chi did not understand if he was going to die here, and his body began to burn and turn. Chi with an open mouth flew Nanak, ready to devour the enemy. The protagonist did not understand whether he would die here or not. He couldn't stop now. A certain fiery man appeared in front of him, and Chi realized that it was too early to give up. Immediately, the entire arena lit up so that nothing could be seen. Louis was in shock and didn't know what had happened to Chi. The old man and his friend were also shocked by what was happening, as was Rakesh. The presenter understood that the barrier wall would not last long. Azam shouted that the crowd needed to be saved, and so Louis immediately ran. He started activating his talent, under the name Chikioya no Hai, Ashes of the Fathers. The type of his talent is distance control. People were shocked that Louis could stop the flames. Then there was an explosion that flew at the girl, but Azam managed to save her at great speed. Tavin also covered people with his rhino skin. Then he asked his friends if they saw the same thing as him. These were flames the same as those of their teacher Leo. Nanak was in shock and he did not understand where the flame came from. He started shouting at Chi that he was a damn liar, because he registered in this tournament as a person, but he turned out to have talent. The mutant accused him of mocking him and mocking him now. He wanted to devour him and tear off his limbs. But before he could finish, he saw him. In front of him stood the whole burnt Chi, who did not understand what was happening to him. He was naked and his flesh was badly burned. She was surprised, because he didn't feel any pain. Literally all friends were shocked by what they saw. Hark didn't know if he was alive or what kind of power it was. Nanak understood that this was impossible, and Hart thought he was reborn. The mutant knew he wasn't amused. He tasted his blood and it used to be human, and this power that he is now flaunting does not change anything. The shark rushed at him with the words that he would kill his slow one. Then one of the friends came, who went to the cafe and watched the fight from there. He also didn't know what kind of flame it was. Seeing everything with his own eyes, he dropped the pizza and softly pronounced Chi's name. Hart was interested, and the old man shouted for Nanaku to run away from where. Hart started to raise his hand and wondered if his flesh had turned to ash when he was burning. Rakash sat in silence and his assistant asked if he should stop the fight, because his guests are not safe. These flames are similar to the flames of the war hero Leo. Rakash squeezed the chair so hard that it cracked. Tavin shouted at Hart not to do it. Nanaku rushed at him to kill him, and Hart was ready to kill him and test his theory about burning flesh. A moment later, Hart created a huge fire and the mutant just flew away. Now the protagonist's talent is Ilio's Phoenix Flame. He enters the state of Ilios, called the Solar Fire Talent. It is one of the original Great Four Talents. Nanaku began to literally burn. Tavin understood that despite all this, he had to see the red sign, painted red with blood that he would soon shed. But he did not know that his comrade, his brother in spirit, his best friend on this day he took his first step over the edge. Nanaku was brutally murdered. His body was completely burned. Tavin, looking at the corpse, understood that he should have given him a helping hand even more persistently and therefore apologized to him. Literally all the viewers were just shocked by what they saw, and someone was very afraid. Azam noticed out loud that she had killed him. Tavin wished he had told him that none of this was his fault and it wasn't his burden that he had to bear, and he had no idea that Hart would become one of humanity's greatest enemies. The protagonist's fire disappeared and he knelt down to gain strength. Immediately, Tavin came running to them with a towel. He asked him if everything was okay, to which Chi said that he could tolerate, but he was even more puzzled. It was as if his body had been torn apart and then sewn back together. Tavin asked him since when they became murderers, but Chi could not find the right words and just kept silent. Immediately, an explosion occurred in Rakash's room and all the cameras were directed at her with bewilderment. Tavin asked about the fact that this could alert Rakash, and the presenter added that everyone should remain calm, because an accident could happen to Rakash. Hart looked viciously and Rakash appeared in front of him, shouting and asking for Hart's name. He assumed that the old man had passed on his talent to him. The cameras turned on and Chi said he would let him say his name. Rakash added that he remembers the two of them. He considered them fierce cubs on the side of his master. He understood that Leo probably chose Hart. Rakash shouted that Leo Thomas was a very good old man. After his death he was still able to find a successor. He kept saying that this week Chi brought Leo's talent into the world. He shouted very angry that he would kill him as easily as he killed his master. All the operators were shocked that he confessed that it was Rakash who killed Leo. Even the audience was shocked that he killed the war hero Leo. Everyone immediately realized that he was coming and confessed himself. Rakash asked if he had come here to avenge his father. If he erases it, he will erase his legacy. He planned to defeat him, but then what? His assistant said that Rakash was doing well, because he confessed everything on the air, to which Rakash looked at him dissatisfied. Inspector Ian Anthony appeared immediately. He is the chief inspector of the police service. He asked him if it was a joke. After all, he hired them to ensure the security of this event, while he is the criminal they are looking for. He kills Leo Thomas, then throws a party to celebrate, and then forces them to guard him. Rakash's partner understood that they could not kill the police, because they were still filming everything. The inspector shouted that Rakash was arrested and that he should not give up. The girl shouted for Jonal Honor to move away from his boss. Jonal told Rakash to just stand behind him. They gave him a final warning that he should immediately move away from Rakash. Leaving, Rakash said that they would see each other again, but even with his precious hero's blood, he is still nothing. The police said there were no more warnings. They ordered them to move away or they would shoot. Jonal replied that he was sure of it and created spikes and protected himself from bullets. His talent, acumen, it can create a molding metal material protruding from the body. The metal is a membrane embedded in its body, like a parasite. She said Rakash's name and the cameraman was very surprised and pointed his camera at him. Hart said he would have prayed that the system would find him before them, because he ended the life of the person who raised them, and his life will not continue. He made his last mistake. He told him to run, because if he kills a wolf, he must not forget to kill his children, because they will chase him to his grave. The whole gang was near Hart and everyone agreed with his words. 4 months later, Rakash was hiding all this time. He was constantly on the run from the authorities. He's not in a position to negotiate with them. After his brilliant and carefully thought-out antics, the world now knows the killer of one of its heroes. People are now living in fear of Kimio again. After a famous fighter uses his talent outside the permitted place, killing a civilian, he would also live in fear. The presenter said that a ban on Kimio is in effect now. A complete ban on the use of talent in public arenas has made many think how far it will go. Does their past come back to haunt them? The rules were created to eliminate the fear that people felt when walking the same streets as Kimio after the war. People could live in peace knowing that Kimio is forbidden to use his talents outside of special places. And the employees of the services who work together with the authorities are highly appreciated in an attempt to promote integration. As a result, cases of discrimination against Kimio have become more frequent. Crime among vigilantes has also increased. Local businesses also refuse to serve non-human customers. The murder of Leo Thomas, now infamous Rakash, Leo's former student, is still at large. Chief Chancellor Abel Legasov said at a press conference, Kimio's fate in this country hangs in the balance, and he does not know what awaits them next. They show us a girl who sighed and said that she had to find Chi. The girl understood that the ban on Kimio is bad and that humanity tends to abuse the world. They have no idea how to maintain it. Human fear is a hellish thing. They seem to have forgotten their past. The war was not so long ago in their history, as many people want to think. Many years ago, Kimio and humans were tearing each other's throats out. The population of Kimio has grown since its first appearance in 1542. With this newfound power, Kimio's thirst for domination grew. Why people should rule and dictate laws on Earth. Since a third of the population left Kimio, many wanted not just to rule, but also to destroy the human race, creating a pure bloodline of evolution. People were forced to unite. All nations united against this common enemy. They defended their lands and people throughout this massacre, while the Kimios hunted and killed millions. However, not all Kimios followed this path. Those who were corrupted were led, influenced, and commanded by one person. Cain is the father of the entire rebellion. The power of Cain defiled his mind. There are 150 of the strongest talented users in the world out of about 2.5 billion Kimios. In these ranks, the top 10 is referred to as the divine level. Cain himself was number 1. Thanks to his influence, the war lasted 124 years, ending in 1957. Despite the fact that Cain was considered the greatest enemy of mankind, he was marked as number 1. In the following years, they developed a means of incarcerating individuals with such strong talents. But no matter how strong he was, Cain was killed. How did the greatest threat to human existence suffer such a fate? From the hands of war heroes, heroes who fought for humanity. The events that led to that fateful battle are as follows. We are shown Trinidad and Tobago in the eastern Cuba 1942. The soldiers talked among themselves and understood that sending children to war was the real madness. Then the main one passed and the soldiers greeted her. She realized that these were volunteer children, and the headquarters told her that this was a terrible idea. There were 12 children standing in front of her. It was Colonel Catherine Forbes. She greeted them and said that she would be their new commander. She knows that most, if not all, of them have lost their parents, which is why they joined this camp. She appreciates that they offer themselves to the National Army. Some of them are Kimios, so they will share the training. In the state the world is in, they will need any help they can get against Cain. Their new life begins today. The colonel advised them to collect their thoughts, because with their help they will restore what once was. Their training started the next day. They were well fed, clothed, and he liked it. This is the place. He still wondered why he had volunteered to come here at all. The guy assumed that he was just tired of searching. He felt safe here. He had seen enough deaths. Then the little boy was called and he turned around. The girl was standing with an even smaller boy. Her name is Elsa, and he's Kevin. She was surprised that he was so quiet and asked how old he was. The boy was 8 years old. Kevin was still very young, so she can't leave him. This is Mom's last order. She invited him to become friends, because everyone needs company. The boy agreed and blushed deeply. He thought to himself that Elsa was a very nice girl. Immediately the shelling began and the soldiers reported to Forbes that Cain's troops were advancing. The girl was very angry, because they should be safe. She didn't understand how they were found. She ordered them to find the rat when it was over. The soldier reported that they immediately informed the major and he had already arrived. Forbes told them to take her to him. Then we are shown Major Jamie Altham, the wolf spider. The colonel did not understand how they were found, so she wanted to evacuate. James replied that he could do without this drama today. The headquarters is launching an airstrike, so you just need to wait it out. The soldier grabbed the children and said they had taken the children, but they were still missing. Looking at them, the major was surprised. He went forward. The soldiers tried to stop him, but he told them to move to a safe distance. Forbes added that he should definitely give them a hard time. The major appeared in front of the mutants and they said that there was more human flesh in front of them. They told him to tell where the rest of his friends were and then maybe they would spare his life. The major took off his hat and activated his abilities. He tied them all up with a red thread and told them to step aside. His talent, the Web of Death. Jamie's talent allows him to create red silk-like threads that have the strength of steel, but at the same time retain some elasticity. These red webs are a direct manifestation of the energy power that is absent from the Kimio race, called Kai. The boy said they couldn't stay here because they would find them soon. Kevin was crying a lot and his sister tried to calm him down. Elsa, all in tears, asked if they would be safe. The guy replied that he wouldn't let anything happen to either of them. They have to believe him. If they keep moving, they won't find them. They were immediately discovered by a demon and the boy was shocked. Immediately, everyone rushed after them, and the children ran very quickly. The boy told them to jump in there, and he could handle them. The boy promised that they would be safe. He started to burn and added that they should hurry up as soon as possible. The major fought the monsters alone, as well as the boy with his fire. Then the major saw the fire and was surprised. He ran there and asked what had happened. He could smell the burnt body. He hoped it wasn't children, namely, to the 1957 year of PR. Then there was a war and a soldier in the trench told the sergeant that there were too many of them, so they specifically hit. He kept shouting at him that this was a real massacre, so they should not be able to sit here. The sergeant replied that he should just wait. Immediately the plane began to be seen, and the soldiers recognized it. The plane opened fire on the enemy. The co-pilot replied that there are only 2 boxes left, to which the major replied that he was monitoring what ammunition was left. The monsters were surprised that the humans had air support and the goblin man added that they should shoot him down now. Then the private, removing his seatbelt, said that he was switching to active support mode. The major added that the private should hurry up, because the people below need this passage to retreat. Climbing onto the wings of the plane, he said that he would follow the instructions exactly. Then the private strapped himself to the plane and said he was in position. The monster from below noticed that the plane was approaching and asked for permission to open fire. But the monster general understood that it was already too late. The private, like Azai from the Avatar, fired from the top of the plane and destroyed all the monsters. People were shocked by this student major. The monsters were literally burning alive. One of the people asked what was the name of the boy the major found. Immediately Leo took off his mask and the major asked him why he did it, to which Leo replied that it looked cooler that way. Then he turned to the major and said that he thought it would be more useful if he was on the ground with people, so he decided to go down. To which she replied that she would kill him if he left this plane. But it was already too late. He unhooked the belt and flew out of the plane and of course the major was very angry. Leo immediately realized when he was flying down that he shouldn't have taken off his mask too soon. The monster, seeing him, told someone to shoot him as soon as possible. After the major landed the plane near the barn, the major tortured a man. She noticed that he called her name, which means he knows about her and her talent Web of Death, which gave her the nickname Wolf Spider. Her talent surpasses protection and control, but he lacked an attacking component, so he adopted his father's knife skills. She hoped he was scary enough now, to which the opponent replied that he would tell her everything. The major replied that it was a wise choice, and she also congratulated him on being the smartest child in his class. His friends had to share his wisdom. She literally hung everyone from above. She wanted to finish as soon as possible because she can't wait to get back. She is also sure that Leo is making a mess. At the same moment, Leo literally destroyed everyone with his fire. A few hours later, the colonel told the major to come in. She congratulated her on the fact that they had done a great job. It wasn't easy to get these soldiers back, but they did. There are rumors about her heroism as well as about the boy. She asked her how Leo was doing. The major explained that he is not the same boy she found 15 years ago. Times are carefree, but Leo is growing up. The colonel understood that she was very devoted to this boy, probably because she saw something in him. To which Ultram replied to Catherine that she had never been so close to a talent with such destructive power. He is like a walking sun. If he is not brought up properly, he can pose a serious threat to people. To which Catherine replied that she just admitted that she felt like an older sister, which is why she treats him like this. But still, she decided to move on to the bad news. They found another airbase controlled by Kane. There are reportedly 13 operational carrier aircraft. She wants every single one of those planes destroyed. If they cut the supply of Kane, they will have a chance. She doesn't have a free team for this mission. Therefore, she will be alone, but if she wants, she can take Leo with her. After Leo told the major that because of his apparent success in the last mission, many believe that he should get his own plane. To which she replied that she wouldn't even trust him with a can opener, much less a fighter. But he needs to pack his bags, because they have a new mission and if he does not escape this time, he will allow him to fly home with them. To which Leo was very happy. Then a certain girl came up to him and congratulated him on his first raid. It was Elsa, Leo's old friend. She added that it was better for him to come back to her, to which Leo replied that he would always come back. After that, we are shown the eastern airbase of Kane. The plane was half a mile from the base. The Major explained to Leo that this was their food storage and distribution center. Limit the fighting as much as possible. They just need to destroy these planes to the ground. This place was packed with Kane's soldiers. They will destroy them and then go to their goal. Then, when they killed all the opponents, Leo noticed that it didn't look very good. The Major did not understand what was the matter. He noticed that earlier there was a message about missing people and now they have found them. Leo asked if this meant that his first raid mission had just gone up to the rescue operation of Ranka, to which the Major replied that he should cool down, because this bastard Kane is holding hostages and they can't ignore it. They both ran and the Major added that plans had changed. Cargo planes were intended not only for rations, but also to move their civilian meat shields. It was something like insurance. With intentions like Kane's, these people won't survive this war. They have to do it quickly and quietly. Leo agreed, but didn't know who it was standing there. The Major looked and was very scared. It was Akuma Kimio. She didn't understand what the hell he was doing here. He was supposed to be hiding abroad. They've been trying to find him for years. Of all the worst possible options, he decided to show up at a random airbase. Kane himself was there. Immediately Leo grabbed the phone and called it. He just got off the phone with the colonel. She agrees that this is a God-given opportunity. She sends the whole army to kill Kane. The Major replied that they couldn't wait that long. With the speed with which this operation is progressing, Kane will be gone in 30 minutes. They will lose their advantage. They have only one way out. The Major wanted to linger. Challenge number 1. It was the best way to die. When Kane was walking with his soldiers, the Major immediately killed them with the help of his talent with kunai. Kane turned slowly and looked at them. He directed his hand at them to use his talent. There was an explosion right there. Kane's talent, Thanatos. His type is psychic. Exact information about this talent has never been recorded. However, if used correctly, it can single-handedly destroy all living things. One of the 4 great talents. He heard about the army and was surprised. His voice sounded as if 1,000 souls were talking at the same time. The Major greeted him and Leo asked if he had a minute to talk about the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Kane used the demonic Kimio. He was huge. Kane's height was 213 centimeters. Immediately, a certain head appeared near Kane, who asked if they had come here to swear allegiance to their new master, to which the Major replied that they were just some crazy soldiers who were looking for a thrill. She ordered Leo to follow her, to which Kane said they hadn't finished talking yet and pointed his hand at them. She shouted at Leo to dodge, and Leo did it. The Major jumped back, and Leo threw himself with fire. Kane replied that their actions were useless and used force again. Immediately, the earth took the form of a wave and was above Leo, from which he was very surprised. The Major shouted at him to get Leo moving. Immediately there were more waves from the ground that wanted to bury Leo alive. But Leo was dodging with his fire. He asked how long he could continue in the same spirit. While many waves of the earth have already tried to kill Leo, the earth was able to catch Leo by the leg and fasten him down. Moments later, she began to submerge him underground and Leo could only just reach for the moon. At the very last moment, the Major shouted that she had had enough of this Kane. The snake of Kane prepared to attack, and the Major ran to help his assistant. She easily destroyed the entire earth around Leo, and Leo thanked her for saving him and flew on his fire. When he flew past Kane, even his opponent paid attention to him. The Major asked him if he knew how his talent works and immediately explained that Thanatos is not a joke. Legend has it that in order to defeat him, 3 talents of equal strength are needed, and so his new mission is to survive. With which Leo agreed and threw his fire at Kane. Immediately, a snake appeared through the fire, which almost killed Leo, who was surprised. The Major managed to shout so that he would not let the snake bite him. It's part of his talent. As soon as he grabs it, it will activate. Cybris, the great serpent, devours the soul of a man for his master. Immediately, Kana appeared next to her, who said that she had finished her research and that they both should have stayed in their mother's wombs. The Major just looked at him angrily and Leo replied that he should fire the guy who sewed his mouth shut because it was a poorly done job. At the same moment, we are shown a colonel who was wearing her armor and said that she wanted them to be at this airbase yesterday. Elsa asked her how many tanks they would take and Catherine replied that they carried every damn thing with them. A soldier immediately appeared, who reported not very good news. During Private Leo's call, he reported that Kane's men were already loading cargo planes. Did he find the blueprint for the F-18 carriers, which they use? The size is massive, but it can't hold that much. They're probably halfway through loading by now, which means that Leo and Altham are distracting Kane to reach out to them and most likely they are already dead. Katni was shocked by these words. At the same moment, the Major and Leo continued their fight and Leo tried to hit Kane with his foot, but the villain grabbed the Major by the face and threw everyone away. When they got up, she said that the army was almost here, so they just needed to stay alive. Then, when Leo was lying down, he noticed that there is a cage with civilians in the building, which means he will not be able to completely free Ilios. Then the mask asked if their loved ones were alive, and the major bent her knees preparing to say something. They don't care about his threats. The mask added that if they follow them, he will forgive them their sins and save the lives of those they love. The major shouted that there were enough words and created a bunch of threads around Cain. This technique is literally called prison. It was the right time for Lo. He heated the kunai very much and used Ilios' claymore. Leo had a huge fiery sword in his hand and ran at the chained Cain. But it was a shame for him. Leo shouted for Cain to fight him. The snake said that everything was going well. The major shouted at Leo to back off, because it wouldn't work. The snake broke out of the threads and headed for Leo with the words that he gave them his soul. The snake opened its mouth wide, preparing to literally swallow Leo. The major understood that everything had gone very badly. She created threads around Leo and threw him away from the snake. Cain asked how dare he touch him, and now their blood will be on their hands. He pointed his hand at people and Leo noticed it. People started shouting for them to help them and Leo rushed straight to them. A second later he was already near them and put his hand in his side. He thought about Elsa in his mind and apologized to her. Immediately, the threads around Leo appeared again. She called him a stupid boy. Leo started shouting at her to wait and asked her to stop. But for Cain, it was a meaningless sacrifice. The major replied that she had not adopted him so that he would die here. The most beautiful times were when she stood next to him as his sister. She protected all people with herself. And she went on to say that his goal in this life is higher than him. Leo's talent will save them all. It was an honor for him to be his guide. He must continue to live and fight, calling Leo the master of Ilios. Then she thanked Leo for everything. The major jumped up to the cage with people with words of farewell and protected all the people at the cost of her life. There were tears on her face and Leo. At the same moment, we are shown Catherine, who ordered everyone to get ready as soon as possible because they need to have time. The lives of two of their people are at stake. They were waiting for this moment to defeat Cain and save the people. Immediately the soldier reported to her that there was an enemy on the hill. It was Cain's army, and of course the colonel was not happy. At that moment Leo was sitting on the ground all drooping, because his teacher was killed and literally cut into 2 parts. Cain also said that her body is so weak of the lower Kimio. Because of his words, Leo began to get very angry. Cain was surprised that Leo decided to continue the fight. Leo literally began to burn. A fire vortex formed around him and Cain continued to speak. He asked if he knew whose flame he was carrying and what power he possessed. Their talents have a common history. Leo just said Thanatos and went into his peak form out of anger. Cain confirmed his words. Leo has a brotherly talent in relation to his talent and called him a brother. At the same moment, the colonel jumped on the tank with her explosive axe to destroy it, and the monsters inside were screaming for them to get out of the tank as soon as possible. A second later, the tank exploded and Catherine shouted loudly and ordered her guys to continue the offensive. Cain said that many years ago, before the world knew what Kimio was, before the first recorded birth of a non-human, in Greece there lived a family of 4 brothers, each of whom had his own talent. They were known as the first Kimios. While these 2 continued their fight, Cain decided to tell the story before. These souls carried the first talents to walk the earth. The locals didn't know what to do in the face of such a force, so they did what a person does best, namely, to worship them as gods. Leo was a little stunned by his words. They both possess one of the 4 great talents, the talents that started it all. Cain again invited him to join him, and not stand in his way as in past times. Together they can put an end to the rule of man. They will elevate their true strength and power. If Leo refuses, then Cain promised him that he would experience true fear. Leo replied that what he had done with his gift angered him to the core. Its existence harms the earth. He was given an order to survive, and he decided to kill the person who gave him this order. At that moment, Leo's flame began to change its color to blue, and he thought that if he had the power, he would switch places with her. He would like her to live. He wanted her to witness how far he had come and how strong she had made him. All of Leo's fire was completely changed and appeared near him like wings of blue fire. Cain answered him that resistance is the choice of fools and directed his hand at him. Leo understood that he could not defeat Thanatos' talent, but he was ready to give his life for the sake of others and immediately flew straight at him. Cain, using his technique, added that his death would not leave him any honor because their mind is like the mind of the gods. Cain created a shield around himself, but Leo was able to almost break through it, so much cracks went through it. The shield began to crack even faster that even Cain was surprised by this arrangement. Immediately he ordered his snake Cyprus to devour his soul. Leo hoped that his teacher would be proud of what he had become. At that moment, the snake bit Leo's hand and Cain started laughing with the words that this was his last mistake. But immediately he realized that this was a trick. Leo knew he would lower his shield to grab it. Thomas hit his hand with a blue flame on Cain's body, causing the latter to writhe in pain. Immediately, he used the technique to throw Leo away with a shout. When Leo got up, he noticed a cage from which cries for help were coming. Because of the hole in Kane's body, souls began to fly out of him. Leo realized that this was his chance to help people. He told them to hold on, because he would have to push the cage. He leaned against her from behind and started pushing. Then he used fire to help him. Leo warned people that this could be unpleasant. A moment later, Leo flew out with the container, forming a huge hole in the building. At that moment, Kane lost his souls, which made him very unhappy. He asked his general how much more, to which the soldier replied that the plane was ready, they should go now. At this time, Catherine ordered everyone to disperse. Their main goal is the safety of the civilian population, and only after finding and killing Kane. Immediately she noticed Leo lying on the ground. Catherine did not understand how Kane managed to escape capture, but he managed to fly away. Colonel Forbes demanded the immediate evacuation of all hostages. Literally all the people were saved and everything was taken into account. She was holding Leo in her arms and crying because of her dead friend. Leo understood that he was the one who should have died that day. After 1 month in the hospital of the Genius headquarters of San Fernando, Leo Thomas became a major and 3 soldiers approached him asking if it was him. They reported to him that Kane was dead. He died from his injuries. As expected, he and the masters were called war heroes. He accepted her medal on her behalf. People treated him like some kind of savior. But Leo hated this damned glory, because it reminds him of the day when he could not save the one who saved him. Then they tell us about the transfer of talents. Talents are birth defects formed in human infants. The result is called kimio, no longer a human child. There are 3 ways in which a person can become a kimio. Talent transfer. A person with talent, with sufficient experience and training, can mentally transfer this talent to a specific person. This can be done only a few moments before death, as the method immediately leads to death. This is often done among the top 150 kimios, as a means of preserving the strongest talents in the family pedigree. Talent extraction, an illegal and forced way to remove talents from kimio. Deadly and extremely painful. A method that is believed to have been used by Kane to extract talents before passing them on to his followers. Possession of an object, extremely rare phenomenon. Talents develop their own mind or consciousness as an independent life force. Then these talents develop inside the object, unlike a human child. The owner of this item can use his talent. Before the introduction of this ban, Chi was used to being a man among kimios, especially in my dojo. Master Leo was like a father to him. He took him in when his parents left. After the establishment of peace between kimio and humans, gyms could participate in internationally recognized martial arts competitions. Since then, their dojo has been taking part in them. Seeing 2 kimios fighting is a great scene. To think that all this power is walking the streets as if nothing had happened. Nowadays, everyone knows or has met kimio, but it wasn't always like that. We are shown the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Unlike today's third of the population, kimios have been a rarity for centuries. The French chief soldier gave the order to fire. The soldiers shouted in chorus for Napoleon. They wanted to seize control of Waterloo today. A British soldier reported to Colonel Bletcher that the French had received reinforcements. They have already pushed them into the trenches. He didn't know if they were retreating or not. The soldier asked him to send for the Reaper. After all, they will not be able to win in the form in which they are now. To which Colonel Bletcher replied that he had already done it. They just need to hope that they would consider it a worthy cause. You just need to hold out a little longer and they will get the Reaper or retreat. At the same moment, a messenger ran to the main ones in the British Army. Lord Wellesley told the messenger to take a breath, then asked if he was injured and if their men had survived. The soldier reported that Napoleon had sent a huge number of reinforcements. Colonel Bletcher asks him for a Reaper, because there are too many enemies. The Lord understood the gravity of the situation. He hoped that no one would force him to do this, forcing him to send the Reaper. The Reaper replied that he was a soldier. He doesn't want any special treatment, because he's here to serve his country. It was Jack the Reaper Kimio. The Lord replied that it was better for him to return here unharmed. It's an order and his country still needs it. Turns out the Reaper was his son, which is why he was worried. Thanks to Kimio, many wars have been won. The same Kimios that people were afraid of. The ones they treated like devils because of their power. These are the ones whose hands built the countries. The Reaper rushed into battle on horseback. Immediately a British soldier noticed how the Reaper rushed straight ahead and jumped over all his comrades. A few kind-hearted people also saw people in Kimio and treated them with respect and dignity. The colonel immediately ordered everyone to immediately put their heads down and jump into the trenches. It is their own stroke of mercy to put an end to Napoleon's forces. He shouted again that if they wanted to live, they should immediately put their heads down. The French soldiers noticed one soldier who was running at them alone on horseback. The head thought he was a delightful guy. He was advancing while his allies were retreating. God only knows if he's brave or stupid. Immediately they opened fire and the Reaper jumped away from the horse and managed to kill the horse. It turns out that the Kimios used to be much stronger than they are now. When the Reaper landed on the ground, the Colonel shouted again for everyone to keep their heads down. Jack began to activate his ability and become covered with purple scars. He had a hole in his side and a huge tentacle came out. It swung completely and there was an axe-like blade at its end. Jack grabbed it and began to swing it at breakneck speed. He literally destroyed half of the troops with one blow. He began to twist his tentacle and easily destroyed the enemy army. The British military at that moment were sitting in a trench and pressed hard to the ground, while covering their ears. The Napoleonic War was won not because of the size of the army, but thanks to the 3 cameos who secretly fought for the Duke of Wellington. Jack twisted the tentacle like a real master. Then he pushed off the ground and jumped very high and with one blow literally cut the ground where the enemies were. We are shown how 2 soldiers are shooting into the smoke and dust formed from Jack's blow, and the third was reloading the weapon. In an instant, the Reaper destroyed the soldiers one by one. And when the soldier reloaded his weapon and turned around, there was already a Reaper with a blade from his stomach next to him. History has hidden their names. The dust of time covers almost all records of their achievements. The French, seeing this cameo, ordered everyone to retreat because there was a real demon on the enemy's side. The head stood to the end and was cut by tentacles. Human efforts cannot erase the work of the great cameos of antiquity who fought side by side with humanity. Kimi may have been a rarity back then, but many paid for the world they enjoy today with their lives. In our modern times, the world has grown to accept them. Living together required active efforts on the part of all governments. I show us Fr Rai Kimio Rank S, who worked as a flight attendant. Forced segregation was no longer applied, as cameos were born into the families of those who passed the laws. Besides, what would life be like without them? Many cameos use their gifts to help society. They add beauty and color to this world. And as they say, they are God's gift to man. They can do what a person thought was impossible when they go their own way in this life. Protect the brother walking next to you. His journey has brought him to you. After that, we are shown a doctor who was very surprised, so much so that he could not find the right words. All his wounds are healing. We are shown the body of Chihart and we understand that he has experienced a lot of pain. Doc had seen talents with healing factors, but in all his years, he had never seen such a degree of healing. Even the wisdom tooth he had recently removed has returned. Chihart was glad to hear such news and Doc continued. Now he is a healthy Kimio, the result of a successful talent transfer. He asked about his left eye and Hart replied that he had completely regained his sight. Doc admitted that what leaves him speechless is accepting what he sees in this Kimio body based on what he knows about his human body. The changes are radical, but controlled. There is no visual difference, and, as he says, no noticeable pain. The metal screws in Chi's ankle disappeared. They were most likely melted by heat. He wants him to be wise in this matter. All injuries are cured, but scars remain on the body. This leads him to believe that he may still be seriously injured. He would like to keep an eye on him for the next 2 months as a precaution. So the doc forbade him excessive physical activity. After 1 week in the Cheguana overpass, there was an explosion and even cars flew away. The Samuel brothers appeared. They wanted everyone to admire their huge and courageous bodies. Today is the day of their reckoning and they bear death and judgment. They said WASA was destroying roads for its construction and constantly shutting off the water supply. They wanted to find and destroy all their pipelines. The police immediately appeared. They said these guys had already had a lot of fun. They advised to take their complaints to the representatives of the parliament, because they spoil everything for everyone Monday. But they refused and the police started shooting at them. During the shooting, Kimio was told that their bullets are nothing to them because they are brothers golems of steel and stone. The golem of steel said that the officers are also part of this problem. He picked up the car and threw it at the police with the words that they had a snack. Immediately there was an explosion and many even flew away. Immediately we are shown how someone is running on the roof. The brothers again said that the government can rot as long as it wants. They don't care anymore. An unknown guy jumped off the roof and started taking off his jacket. The villains continued to say that their leaders in their costumes want all the Kimios, like them, to sit in a prison cell. They use the police only because they are people. Immediately, the other guy seemed to accelerate and lightning appeared around him. Cole started destroying cars and added that human officers were only expendable. He advised them to just wake up and smell this coffee, to which Ian replied that they were wasting taxpayers' money. The metal golem noticed that the human mind is so easy to control and called his brother. Immediately, a truck flew into another golem, and when the metal one turned around, there was already a lot of fire near his face. Even the metal one was hot when the earth golem got out from under the truck. He said they found them. Immediately, we are shown the updated design of Chihart, with his new mask and Tevin, who greeted them. The golem brothers said they were ready for the two of them. They would merge together and become a big ultra golem. But Tavin didn't care. He was only worried about hunger, and Chi suggested that he finish quickly. The golem replied that just not again. They were able to stop them the first time, but they will execute the verdict for the people. The policeman asked what they should do, and Officer Yen replied that they needed to free the bridge and give them space, because this was no longer their battle. She jumped over the golem and fired a lot of fire at him, and Tavin beat him with his body. The golem replied that since they were friends of the government, they turned out to be enemies of the people. Tavin and the golem hit fists, and the ultra golem was much bigger than Tavin. Immediately Chi fired at him, and the golem said that this would not be enough. When he turned around, the rhinoceros was no longer there, and in a moment it was on his head. Tavin shouted that they should do it right away, and Tavin took a cool stance and he created a lot of lights near his hand and then grabbed them with his hands, forming a kind of dagger. The golem immediately began to panic and begged them to stop. They admitted that they were just joking and trying to just talk about it all. She created a conchio, which means spear in Greek, and threw it with incredible speed at the golem. It pierced the enemy's chest and he literally exploded. The threat was neutralized. The brothers were separated and handcuffed. Tavin saw Inspector Ian and joked with him that he had everything under control. Ian thanked them and he added that he and his people are indebted to you. Private Brandon Gale immediately approached and apologized for interrupting, but they had to arrest all the Kimios on the spot. And the inspector replied that they had arrested all the Kimios he saw here. Friends started laughing, and leaving Chi said that he should take care of his people, and Ian asked them to take care of themselves, because they greatly help society. After that, we are shown the guest mansion of Ilon Hemlock. Tavin said they were back and they had finished another crazy day. He thanked him again for letting them leave here. Ilon Hemlock asked them not to mention it. She asked how everything went and if there were any successes in finding Rakash today. Louis replied that Azam got some leads after checking the sightings reports. He'll fill them in later. This Kimio ban interferes with their work, but no matter. Helping to maintain peace is a reward in itself. But besides, their new sensei keeps them in constant suspense. She noticed it. They saw Anton training on the way here. Then Louis asked how the regulators work. The protagonist replied that they were keeping the fire under control. He hasn't hurt civilians yet, so they're doing their thing. Ilios is still under control. A familiar girl immediately came up and said that the two of them were all over the news, and his spear was sloppy stuff, to which Chi started shouting that Andrea's spear was a work of art. She started laughing at him because it was so weak. She advised him to imagine if it would explode right in his face. Heart drooped a little, and the girl continued to giggle. After that, we are shown a beautiful house and a sunset with Sakura. She was walking through the dojo and he was noticed by this girl, who said that the Hemlock Mansion is the only Japanese-style architecture on the Trinidad. This place should be a tourist attraction. She replied that since there is a ban on Kimio and they are literally hiding here, he thinks that guests would be a bad idea. Andrea replied that in any case, Lewis's family tree is simply amazing. She thought the Hemlocks had a talent for pedigree. The ashes of the fathers, a talent that only a true Hemlock can possess by blood, transmitted by passing on talent to the first son of each generation. She laughed, saying that this is quite a rich family. Andrea noticed that his mind was far away from here and he was going there again today, and the fact that a certain girl will be very happy to see him. Later that evening, we are shown an orphanage on the west coast. Miss Farmer noticed Chi and he greeted her. He asked her not to say his name now, because of this he could be arrested. The girl laughed at this and asked if 6 months had already passed. She had been asking about him almost every day since his last visit. Farmer thought the girl would faint when she saw him. Hart started up the stairs and thought about it. He went to the door and began to rehearse his speech before entering. And immediately his sister flew out of the room and she said that now he was here. Afterward, Hart was already in her room and was surprised with her grades. He knew she was smarter than him, but those grades were just amazing. The sister replied that these lessons were too boring. He will be surprised if she says that she is the head of her class. Hart noticed that she had become very self-confident. He asked what he should give her if she took first place in the exams. She just smiled, then turned around and replied that she wanted him to take her to Uncle Tavin and the others. Her name is Yukiko Hart. She promised that he would do anything for her. Yukiko was still angry at him for not visiting her. He knows he's fighting for money to keep her here, but she's disgusted to see his scars. She hoped that she would forgive him soon. It's also time for him to go, and advised her not to forget to brush her teeth. He's even already paid his rent for the next 2 months. She hugged him and asked him to visit her more often. After that, we are again shown the guest mansion of Ilon Hemlock. Andrea told everyone to listen to her. Today is the day they have been waiting for so long. This is to show and tell. They should impress her with their progress, to demonstrate what they have learned. She showed them their weaknesses, and overcoming them is their only way forward. If they manage to move it from its place, she will tell her what her talent is and what is in this bag. She wanted to see if their hard skulls had received anything from her training. And it is not so easy to impress her, because she is the granddaughter of Leo Thomas, their sensei. They have to prove that they are not ordinary Kimios. Tavin went first and Andrea added that he would please them with this new improved rhino skin. Immediately, Tavin began to transform and he became a rhinoceros man. Andrea was surprised, because she had never known that it was possible to improve a hidden talent. The upgrade eliminates the previous flaw related to the feeling of damage on impact. But she knows that he can do more than Tevin. She asked what other skins he could make more. Tavin replied that he had a total of 3 skins: rhinoceros, lion, and blacksmith. Rhino skin burns oxygen as fuel, hence the large nostrils. Due to the abundance of oxygen, the skin is weaker, but limitless and is his default skin. Then there is the lion. The lion's skin is all strength, but almost no protection. It uses stamina as fuel, so its maximum activation is currently 20 seconds. A blacksmith is a combination of skins that uses his blood as fuel. The last time he tried, his heart stopped, but he walked around in fear for a long time. He will show them why he is the tank of the team. He began to transform into a real lion. It was like a strong whirlwind all around, and a huge white lion formed above Tevin. Then he farted a little and flew a long distance, and Andrea was surprised. Next in line is Chi. He had to impress her. The protagonist replied that there was no problem with that. He created a spear and immediately stone dummies appeared. Chi put on his mask and went into battle. Through practice, Chi created a spear, a compressed, long-range attack. He was also able to use it in close combat, wielding his spear in the Naginata style. Now he has a weapon in this spear. Andrea understood that he was progressing very well as Ilio's successor. Hart decided to throw his spear at a small target. Throwing his spear with all his strength and accuracy hit the target. Andrea noticed that it was a little careless, but overall not bad. Azam went next. The girl asked to show everything he has. He had to defeat 15 targets in 3 seconds. He grabbed his nunchucks and got into the Bruce Lee pose, and began to attack. Andrea noticed that he was the youngest, but the smartest. He added a clueless weapon to his tactical armament. With the rush-type talent, he can now deliver crushing blows with less effort. He easily destroyed all the targets and managed to cope with everything. Tavin really wanted to find out what was in this bag, and she asked Louis to help them with this. Andrea called them again and told them that if they played their cards right, she would reveal all this and even more to them. The guys got a little excited, and she said that if Louis couldn't handle it, he would kill him. She noticed that the Hemlocks were quite famous. He had heard from his grandfather that their family's talent was the most creative. Immediately, he began to release the ashes, and she was surprised with what he had done. The talent of Louis, Chikyoya no Hai, is the ashes of the fathers. An ancient family talent, controls and manipulates the mass of ashes. A moment later, Louis created an ash hydra. It was incredibly huge in size with many heads. Then they started disappearing, and Andrea told him to wipe that stupid grin off his face. She's not going to lie, it scared her for a second. They're not as hopeless as she thought. Their brains really have the ability to learn. But Anton definitely needs to surpass him. Otherwise there will be no disclosure of talent, and he will have to keep guessing what's in the bag. And now he had to tell her what he could do. She told her that Dre should move away. Anton's talent practically consists of 2 parts. He knows the passive part where he creates indestructible wands. But in fact, Anton has a shift talent who has his own talent, wands. The shift talent that controls the wands is what she will see today. And he can use the talent of his shift without her permission. But he avoids the shift because he is a bit indomitable. He decided to change the beast to Kong at 30%. Louis hoped that with 30%, they would be fine. Anton King and his talent, Kong. An ancient beast that has its own talent, Kong's pride, a real staff. He shouted about who dared to summon the mighty Kong. Andrea was pleased with them. She said that if they accept her as their teacher, then they are ready for her high standards of skill. She's impressed, but only a little. Rakash will not be an easy opponent. He is ranked 87th in the top 150 in the world. If they want to have any chance, they need to be much stronger than they are now. For the fact that they do not meet her standards, there will be no opening of the bag and the disclosure of her talent. When she left, she added that training would resume in the morning, and all the guys were very upset. Tonight, with a view of the Hemlock Mansion, a certain person said on the phone that the group was demonstrating its abilities today. And even though the master was killed, but his offspring still carry his banner. The man on the phone wanted to say that the longer they wait, the worse, but the guy interrupted him and replied that they were in no hurry. We need to let Andrea take care of them, because their time will come soon, and they will be there to get back what was taken from them.